What's going on, everybody? Today I just want to take a look at my new Aux template for Ableton Suite. Now this template is for Aux keys players. That's anybody doing sounds that are not just piano and a pad. Sounds like synth leads, synth bells, synth brass, drum pads, noise pads, strings, that kind of thing. On the website, when you go to get the template, you'll notice that I've included a quick, brief overview. I've also included this note that this template utilizes the IAC driver for Apple computers, and so a Mac is needed to use it fully. I'm sorry, Windows users. That's just how it is, unfortunately. Most people that I've seen running keys with Ableton typically will be on a Mac computer, so most everybody should be safe. Just like the other keys template, there are two different versions. There's a version that uses plugins, and there's a version where I remade everything with stock Ableton sounds. The plugins required for this session are Omnisphere 3, Valhalla VintageVerb, and Valhalla Shimmer. All right, when you download the template, this is what it should look like right here. When you open that folder, you get these 4 items. You have this MIDI mapping PDF, this MIDI mappings folder, the README text, and then the project files. Let's look at this MIDI mapping PDF. You open it up. This is a PDF document where I noted the mappings for everything in the session. So you'll see I've included like what MIDI channel it's on and where it's going, whether it's a program control or a MIDI note. That way, if you ever need to connect a MIDI controller that I haven't made a preset for, instead of going in the session and trying to see where everything's mapped, you can just go into this document and map everything based off of this document. All of these are the presets you'll select. This IAC channel is the drones, so you would map everything to the drone pads. And then down here, just some miscellaneous mappings such as song launches, reverbs if you have to map to any kind of knobs. And then right here is where you would map to the faders themselves. All right, the next folder down is where I've included presets for some of the more popular MIDI controllers, such as the Novation Launch Pad, Launch Key, Launch Control, Nano Control, and then the Archeria Key Labs. Keep in mind for Novation products, you'll need their component software. This is kind of what it looks like. You can get the custom mode, send custom modes to it. Basically, you'll bring in the preset into this software and throw it to whatever device you connect. For Nano Control, you'll need the chord control editor. This is where you can plug in any chord products and make presets for them, map anything where you need to. For the Archeria products, you'll need their MIDI Control Center application. It's super similar to the Novation software. You can just make presets and send it to the hardware, and that way things are ready to go when you plug the hardware in. All right, the third item in this folder is going to be this README text file. When you open it up, you'll see that it just contains descriptions for everything in the session. This is a super helpful guide if you have any questions about how to set something up within the session. Referencing this will be a lot quicker than asking me a question, whether it's on email or direct message. So I recommend, if you ever have any questions, to reference this document. I've also included it as a lesson within the Ableton session, but we'll go over that later. Now, before you do anything, you will need to set up your IAC driver. What that is how you can send MIDI notes to trigger things within the session. It's super easy to set up if you haven't already, and I'll show you real quick. You'll want to go into your applications and find the Audio MIDI Setup application. When you open it up, most likely you'll be on this page where you select audio devices. You're going to want to get to the MIDI page. To do that, I always go to Window and then Show MIDI Studio. When that opens up, you'll see basically every MIDI controller that's ever been connected to your computer. You want to find this first item, IAC driver. If you've never set it up, it'll be like a darker red, kind of like grayed out red. To set it up, if you haven't, you'll just double click it. Make sure this is checked, devices online. Under ports, you should see bus 1. If you see something saying there are no ports, you'll want to go down here and click the plus button until you see bus 1. Once you've made all those changes, just hit apply, and that's all you have to do outside of Ableton for the IAC driver. All right, now with that set up, we can open the session. So go ahead and open the session folder. You'll see where everything is, all the presets, samples, and the 2 sessions. You have the plugin version and the stock version. We're going to take a quick look at the plugin version first. Since they were both made with Ableton 11, you're able to open them in both Ableton 11 and 12. If you want to open in 11, all you would have to do is right click, open with, and select which version of Ableton you want it to open in. I have found that in the past, Ableton 11 worked better with keys templates. However, recently, Ableton 12 has proven to be really solid. I've even just ran this template at a pretty big conference using just Ableton 12 without any issues. Alrighty, so once that session opens up, this will be the screen that you see. Over here on the right is the lessons page I was talking about. Basically, this is the same exact thing that you'll find in the text file. It's just housed within Ableton itself. Once again, referencing this will be a lot faster than sending a message. Hopefully, this video will go over everything in this instruction manual and more, so you shouldn't have any questions. To close this window, all you have to do is hit X, and then to open it up, all you have to do is go to View, and then Help View, and it should pop right up. All right, upon first glance, you'll see that this is laid out very similar to my main keys template. Before we dive in further though, let's set a couple of things up. So we'll go to Live, Settings. Now this first audio screen is where you will set your audio device. Since I'm at home, I'm going to be using my Apollo. So I'll set the audio input device to the Apollo, and I'll set the audio output device to the Apollo as well. The next thing we want to look at is the link tempo and MIDI screen. This is where we're going to make sure all of our MIDI controllers are good to go, including the IAC controller. This is what we just set up in the audio MIDI application outside of Ableton. On input ports, you're going to find your IAC driver, bus 1, and you're going to set remote to on, and you're going to leave these first two, track and sync, off. You're then going to go down to output and find the IAC driver, and you're going to set track to on and leave the other two blank. This will basically allow Ableton to take a MIDI cue and send it to itself within the computer. If you have any other hardware MIDI controllers, you'll want to make sure that they're set to track and remote on the input. The output isn't important unless you're trying to set stuff like sending any kind of like color changes to your launch control or something like that. So here's a quick note, especially with Novation controllers, if you see it under the control surface, for instance, let me select the launch pad I have connected. You'll see that it adds this green block around everything, and then you'll see that it changes the view on the hardware itself. Now, I've only had this issue with Novation controllers. The issue is super fixable. All you have to do is go to this first drop down where you select the controller, and you'll just select none. It'll go back to your preset screen on the hardware, and it'll take away that green box. Another really important thing to do, and I got a lot of DMs on the last session I built saying, you used a VST2 file and I can't open a VST2 file because it's saying it's not available. All you have to do is make sure this is selected to on, use VST2 plugin system folders. As long as that is on, you can use VST2 files within your session. Now that all the Ableton settings are set up, we can now start mapping controllers. This first channel is where you would plug in any hardware boards. So if you had a Nord, a Prophet, a Juno, anything that you want to use sounds from, if you wanted to mix it within the same template, you would just need to go select where it's coming from. Everything is already set to monitor in, so all you would need to do is turn it on, and you would be able to hear it right away. Just like the main keys template, this next drop down is where we're going to select our MIDI controllers. Now, the way I've set this up that is different from the last template I made. Instead of using this built-in MIDI sender and receiver from Ableton, I've used this Max for Live device, which allows me to send MIDI to a bus and receive it on the same bus. So, for instance, whatever I put on this channel, whatever MIDI controller I map to this channel, everything that is on these will receive MIDI from this Aux 1 channel. I did the same thing with this second channel. It's sending MIDI to bus 2. Everything on bus 2 will now receive MIDI from this channel. Now, you may be asking, why did I do that? The answer is really simple. I wanted these colors. If I did it the other way, say I selected MIDI from Keylab and this was MIDI input from Aux 1, now all of the colors have disappeared. When I'm using something like a launch pad to switch patches, it's pretty crucial that I see the colors so they match up with what's on the pad. I found that doing it using this sender and receiver device does the same thing, but lets me keep the colors, and it doesn't add hardly any more processing power to the session from what I've noticed. All right, Aux 1, like I said, this is where you'll select your first controller. This is going to be mapped to your pad, main A, main B, your strings channel, and your vocoder channel. This is where I would map any board that's like my main board, doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Today it's going to be this Keylab Mark II 88, so I'll select that in the drop down, and it's good to go already. There's nothing more I need to do. I don't need to go in individually and map this to the Keylab. Same thing with Aux 2, MIDI from today I'm using the 61 key Keylab. Everything is mapped and I'm good to go. All right, first up, let's take a look at our pads. On the last video I made for my main keys template, I said that a warm pad is a warm pad and you don't need any more pads besides that. Basically, what I was trying to say is for main keys, a warm pad is a warm pad. It's kind of just something you want to put under your piano. As an aux player, it is pretty crucial to have different sounding pads for different sounding songs or different moments. I've included 5 different pads. This first pad, basic pad, is the same pad that was in that main keys session. It's super warm, doesn't have a really slow attack or a really long decay. It's a really good warm sounding pad. This next pad, Art Pad, is a pad that I made. It's got 2 layers. It's got the pad, which I made with Omnisphere, but I sampled it down. And then it's got this ARP that I made using Ableton's built-in arpeggiator and this analog instrument. This pad's a really cool layer for a lot of songs. Just adds a really fast ARP that sync to the BPM. Any song changes you make or any tempo changes you make, it'll be locked to the tempo. Here's what it sounds like. This next pad is called AmbiPad. This is a really cool pad that I made. It uses 3 different layers. For AmbiPad though, it's bypassing this noise layer, and we'll go over that on the next pad. But these first 2 layers are from Omnisphere. But once again, I sampled it down and modded it a little bit outside of Omnisphere. Here's what that pad sounds like. That pad is really good for worship moments. It's got like a CS80 Blade Runner kind of sound when you open up the filter. This next pad is the same exact pad, except we've added that noise layer. I've done some EQ and I've added an auto filter to the noise. So it's got like a sweeping motion to it. And here's what that sounds like. That's such a cool pad to me. I love using it as a drone pad sometimes if I ever just hold down the 1 and the 5. Sometimes I'll use that pad instead of the drone pads I have programmed in just to add that noise layer, that sweeping noise to it. All right, this last pad is called Scoring Pad. This is a pad I included in my Omnisphere preset bundle I put out with SoundShop a few months back. But I sampled it down into Ableton. I've also added a couple of like external tweaks to it. Here's what that pad sounds like. Moving over to the main A layer. Once again, everything is still mapped to aux1. So these are going to be a lot of mainboard kind of sounds. If you have my other keys template, this first preset will be pretty familiar. This is the Supersaw sound that I made using Omnisphere and the Nord Stage 3. This next patch is called Polysweep. Basically, it is a JX3P that I sampled and the Supersaw you just heard paired together. The biggest difference with the Supersaw on this patch and the other Supersaw is that the filter envelope attack time is really long, and you'll hear what I'm talking about in a second. Kind of makes sense why I called it Polysweep now. The attack is linked to the filter, and so as time goes by, the filter is essentially opening up. This next patch is called Bubble Pad. This was also a patch I included in my Omnisphere preset bank. I did make some changes to the patch though. I like this pad on a separate channel than the other pads because I like layering this pad in with the other pads, if that makes sense. Here's what that pad sounds like on its own. Now let's see what it sounds like when I layer it with another pad. Let's layer it with this noise pad from the first channel. The next patch, GG Brass, which stands for Good Good Brass, is the synth brass sound from the last session I made. This is like my signature synth brass sound. I love it to death. I use it on everything. Here's what it sounds like. All right, coming in next, we have a pretty cool patch I made using a hardware Mellotron M4000D. And it's got the 16 violins preset pan to the right, the Mark II flutes pan to the left. So the way the Mellotron works is it has a function to where it can pitch things up. Basically, all it was doing though internally was it was taking the tape and it was playing it faster or playing it slower. I recorded both the slow sample from the M4000D and the fast sample. And I set it up to where the mod wheel, when it's all the way down, you're hearing the slow sample. When the mod wheel is all the way up, you're hearing the fast sample. But the cool thing that makes it super quirky and very Mellotron sounding, you hear it speeding up and you hear it slowing down. So I'll demonstrate what I'm talking about. I included this little plugin rack I made called Obliviate. When you turn this knob up, it makes it sound super far away and grainy. And when you bring it back down, it brings the sound back in closer. These presets down here I've separated from everything else just because on the launch pad, the way I set it up is I always have my chromatic scale at the bottom, and I'm only able to put these 5 on a page with the chromatic scale. I use the chromatic scale for triggering drone pads. But I also have another page set up on the launch pad to where I can turn off the chromatic scale and it shows me these bottom 3. These are just extra sounds that I like to have ready to go. This sound, Tape Juno, is an old Juno sound that I sampled. I paired it with a texture I had on my old JDXI keyboard. And then I added some vinyl distortion and some tube saturation to it. It's got a really cool vintage sound, almost like a synth brass sound, but it's just a little bit different. I'll let you hear what I mean. All right, this next patch is a little bit interesting. It's a synth bass that I added. However, I programmed it to where it's only activated when you press a button on your MIDI controller. For instance, Launchpad, Archeria, Keylab. There should be a pad on both of those to where when you press this, it turns the synth bass on. It's only on the lower octave. And you can even have the synth bass on and play another sound on the main A channel. It's the way I set it up within the chain to where it plays underneath everything at all times. You would just need to hit the button to activate it. I'll show you what it sounds like on its own, and then I'll show you what it sounds like layered with a sound like the synth brass. All right, this last sound on the main A channel is kind of like a bonus fun sound. It's called Trap. Basically, it's got these 4 layers. It's got a pad, some key sounds, 808, and this trap loop that I've added. That is BPM synced. It's a loop that I chopped up. It's in a minor key. I'll show you real quick. Essentially, if you ever needed to make a trap beat super fast, it's a little limited, but you have the tools you need right there. All right, moving over to main B. The first preset we have is this analog plugs preset. This one was also included in my last keys bundle. This is a pluck sound that I made in Omnisphere. I love using this pluck sound anytime I need to do any kind of arps or any kind of like plucky riffs. It has a nice delay on it, which kind of helps carry it, make it feel like an arp sometimes. Here's an example of how I would use this kind of sound. The next sound we have is this sound called Polygoat. This is an Omnisphere patch I made recently. It's got 2 layers. These 2 layers, never named this one. That's kind of funny. It's got a kind of a noise sweep to it. It's good for very in-your-face moments. Going down, we have, of course, the GOAT Distant Memories. This version of Distant Memories, I did some tweaking to, though. A lot of the editing was on the effects page for sure. Just kind of going through and like editing some of the effects. I think I edited the filter and the envelope a little bit, and I might have even gone in and adjusted the waveforms as well. Here's what that updated version of Distant Memories sounds like. Yep, it doesn't have that swell or that tail that you typically hear on this patch. This next patch is a sine wave that's broken into 2 parts. I have the root and then I have a 7th. The 7th only comes in when you bring the mod wheel up. Let me show you what that sounds like. Next on the list, we have this patch called Holy Textures. This is a patch I made for a single that I worked on with somebody and just fell in love with it. So I included it in my arsenal. It's just this really distorted sound that I sampled and made an instrument out of. Here's what that one sounds like. It's great to just use very sparingly. I kind of use it as like a transition piece going from one section to another, especially on slower songs. It works really well. All right, now these three right here are all the same sound. They're just variations on the same sound, kind of like the noise pad was to ambipad. So all of these are synth pulses, and they're built out of an Omnisphere preset I made. All it is a synth with an LFO that makes it sound like it has a chord arp on it. But it's not an actual ARP, it's just the LFO, which makes it a little bit more flexible, in my opinion. Here's what the patch sounds like when you just have the eighth note pulse on. As I'm sure you can hear, guys, it has some delay and some reverb on it. This preset right here, the eighth no effects, basically all that is, and you can see it do it right there. It's just taking that delay off so the release is a lot cleaner. And you probably guessed it, this one, 16th note pulse, is just making that LFO rate into a 16th note. This is what that sounds like. It's also worth mentioning that all of these are synced to the BPM of the project. So when you go and select your song BPMs or set your song BPMs up, it will be synced to whatever BPM the song is. Shifting over to the top board sounds, we have the Aux 2 sounds. And keep in mind, everything on this Aux 2 MIDI set channel will go to the Aux 2 group. Aux A is typically all of my lead sounds. Aux B are sounds that aren't necessarily lead sounds, but I still want on my top board, and sounds I would typically double with Aux A sounds. Let's take a look at this first sound. This is a super saw lead that I made for my Omnisphere pack I put out with Sound Shop called Butter Saw Lead. I actually used this sound on a project recently. Here's what it sounds like. All right, this next sound, Annabelle's, is basically your go-to stereotypical gospel bell sound. I didn't find a preset though. I made these on my own. This is what that sounds like. Pretty standard bell sound, nothing too special about them. All right, this next lead sound I made using the Mini Moog plugin from Arturia. I sampled it down though, so you don't have to have the plugin. And it's got this like cool like jazz fusion kind of sound to it, so I called it Fusion Lead. This lead has a really slow attack time, which gives it a really cool sound. Here's what it sounds like. All right, this next patch curse lead is a sound I've used for a very long time. It's had a few iterations of the sound. This is kind of where we are now. It's got a solid body and it's got this patch that I've grown to love and love and love and use it on just about everything called the Liquid Tea lead. Liquid Tea lead is based off an old Kurzweil keyboard called the K2600. It's really useful for any keyboard solos, following lines, and it has like a unique character when you use the mod wheel and when you use Aftertouch. All right, next we have a sine lead. It's a pretty good rule of thumb. If you're going to have an aux template, you need to include some kind of sine lead in there. It's kind of lying because this is actually a triangle wave sampled from my Behringer Model D, which is a clone of the Mini Moog Model D. However, it has the same quality of a sine lead. I've added the delay to it. I've added a bit of reverb. Here's what that sounds like. Going down the list, we have this patch, Sidechain Butter. All this patch is the same sound from up here, the butter saw lead, but with a sidechain to it. I'm using Omnisphere 3's new Pump-O-Matic feature to give it that pumping sidechain effect that you find in a lot of dance EDM style music. Here's what it sounds like with the Pump-O-Matic on. All right, this next lead sound, the Moog lead, this is an Omnisphere preset of a Sub 37. I've made some tweaks to it so the mod wheel and Aftertouch kind of do the same thing. This is just a really classic go-to lead sound. Here's what it sounds like. If you can guess the song that solo is from, you and I are now best friends. It's just how it works. All right, moving down, the last one on the list is this piano lead. This is a piano patch that I sampled, added a bunch of effects. If I unpacked all of these, it would just go on for a good bit. This patch is really good for doubling piano lines, any kind of lead lines. It's kind of like Annabelle's, except this one fits a little more nicely in the CCM environment. Here's what it sounds like. All right, moving over to Aux B, we have GG Brass again. The reason I have it twice in this session is because sometimes I want it on the top board and something different on the bottom board. So since we've already heard this sound, I'm not going to play it again. The next one down is this polycomp sound. This sound is kind of like Annabelle's and piano lead. It's really good at emphasizing lines, anything that needs to stand out. Here's what this patch sounds like. If you want a cheat code, I sometimes layer this with Annabelle's or piano lead just so it cuts through a little bit more. Here's what it sounds like with Annabelle's. Here's what it sounds like with the piano lead. All right, moving down the patch list, we have this patch called Screamer. This is a really cool lead sound. It's not too aggressive, but it has a lot of dirt to it. It pairs well with just about any other sound in this Aux A category. It's similar to the Voice of Love sound that a lot of people have used on worship songs in the past 10 years or so. It's a lot grimier than Voice of Love is, and I'll show you what I mean. Going down the list, we have this pluck sound. There's nothing super special about this sound. I believe it was meant to be another sound, but in the end, I kind of shaped it into more of a pluck. The mod wheel controls the cutoff. Here's what that patch sounds like. All right, next on the list is another sound I had released with the Sound Shop pack. I made a few changes to it so it fits a little better in the mix. It's this distorted Celeste sound. The top layer is the distorted sound. The bottom layer is actually a low droning bass sound. Here's what it sounds like in context. All right, moving down the list, we have the hit group. This sound is very similar to the synth-based sound from main A, with the fact that it's constantly on, it's constantly running under everything. You can see down here in chain selector that it is on at all times. The only thing is I have a pad set up on all the MIDI controllers that turns the sound on while that pad is being held. This is like your impact sound, your orc hit, your synth hit. The reason I have a pad mapped to turn the sound on and off just by holding it is because a lot of times I will be playing a synth line and just need to accent one part of that line or accent the end of that line. So by touching the pad, holding it, I can play the hits and then release, and the hits are no longer being played and I can continue playing the lead. So to demonstrate, I'm going to play the hits on their own and then I'm going to add a lead line and show you how I would trigger it on and off at the end of a phrase. The last two sounds in this group are Annabelle's and piano lead. Like I said earlier, I like using sounds interchangeably. Sometimes I'll be playing something on this side, but want Annabelle's, so it's over here. And that way I have more options and more flexibility. All right, moving over, we have the string section. These are going to be the exact same strings that were in the main keys template. We have the quartet layer and we have the Omnisphere layer. Up here turns the quartet on, and right here turns the quartet off. For my strings, they're always going to be matched to an expression pedal, which is controlling this master volume right here. So let's hear what it sounds like with the quartet on. All right, I'm now going to play it with this quartet off. All right, moving over, we have the Vocoder, which is a pretty new addition to my aux rig. It's never something I've needed until recently. I've seen a lot of people use them though, and they are really cool. So I thought it'd be a really fun addition to add my own. So the vocoder is made up of two different parts. We have the source audio, which is this Omnisphere patch right here. And we have the audio input that has the vocoder on it and any kind of effects I needed to add. So the way it works is this plugin right here is set to external. The external is set to the source audio, which is Omnisphere right here. Now it's crucial to keep this audio off or you're going to hear the Omnisphere patch while it's being played. And then on the audio channel, you just need to go through and select where your audio input is coming from. And this is set to monitor in, so it is always on. So anytime you're not using the vocoder, just make sure you have it off or you have it down, either one. Here's an example of what the vocoder sounds like.
Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hands have provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me.
All right, so next over we have the drone and textures group. Without getting too in the details, I had to set this up in a way where the preset selection and the drone selection were kept separate. That way, when you select a preset, you weren't triggering the drones. In the past, whenever you selected a preset, it would start the global playback and the drones would continue to play unless you turn the volume down. So I figured out a way to where I can select a preset and the drones won't play at all unless they're triggered by this IAC channel right here. So anytime I hit F, it triggers all the things in F. If I hit E, it triggers everything in E. When I hit D, it triggers everything in D, and so on and so on. All this is doing is working like a MIDI controller within the session, and it's just sending a MIDI signal to the start of each note. So breaking down the drones, this first drone pad was originally built in Omnisphere. However, I sampled it down to make it a little lighter on my CPU. So this is what this drone sounds like. Next over, we have the audio drones. We have a major and a minor one. Major you would play, that is your typical drone. Minor you would play if you're in a warfare moment or you just need to set a minor key. The biggest difference is minor drone has some more texture to it and it hints at the minor third. Here's what the major drone sounds like. Here's what the minor drone sounds like. Both of these drones can be easily paired with this first MIDI drone channel. Moving over, we have our textures. The first texture drone we have is the same one that I had in my keys template. It has two different layers. It has the main texture layer and the piano texture layer. Here's what that one sounds like. The next texture we have is this patch that I actually built using my Fender Rhodes. I played a bunch of open chords with it and reversed the sample and locked it to the BPM, so it's just constantly swelling in the background. Here's what that texture sounds like. This next sound is one of my favorite sounds I've ever made. This is also made from my Fender Rhodes. I basically recorded 3 different loops with the Rhodes, chopped it up, and panned 2 of them left and right, and then the main ones straight down the middle. Added a whole bunch of effects, and this is what we ended up with. The cool thing about both of the Rhodes textures is they're synced to the BPM, so whatever you set your song BPM to, both of them will be in sync with the song as long as you trigger on the downbeat. One cool thing about this session is I can take song 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and basically curate this to whatever my set is. So let's say song 1 is 127.44, song 2 is 103, and let's say it's 6/8. So I'll change that to 103.68. Song 3, let's change that to, what's a good one? 86. Let's keep that at 682. Now for song 1, I can go through and think, what sound do I need for my pad first? Say the song needs to start with this art pad, so I can hit Option and drag down art pad right there. Say I want that synth brass sound at the top of the song as well. So I'll take the synth brass, hold Option, drag it down. And I don't want 16th note pulses. I want 8th note pulses with no effects. I'll hold Option and drag that clip down. Now let me think about my top board sounds. I want Annabelle's on top A, and I want the Screamer lead on Aux B. And so I've set up all the sounds to trigger when I hit song 1. I could even do it for my drone pad. So say song 1 is in the key of A. I can just select the IAC clip of A and drag it down here. And now when I hit song 1, it triggers everything in A. Everything's locked to the BPM of 127, and I have all the patches I need ready to go. And if I need to make any patch changes throughout the song, I can just make those manually. If you want, you could also duplicate song 1 multiple times like this and just change any of these patches. So say in the pre-chorus, I want poly sweep instead of the synth brass. I can go ahead and add that right here. Mind you, all this is still song 1, and you can do this as much as you want. You can customize it as much as you want. It's just really helpful, and it really sets you up for success so you don't have to think about what's coming next in your set. Let's take a look at the return tracks. So there are 2 different reverbs. There is this Valhalla Hall verb and this Valhalla Shimmer verb. And you can see where I've already gone and pre-mapped some of these sounds to send to those reverbs. Now you may be asking, why is there 4 return tracks when you're only using 2? I set up these B return tracks, which are duplicates of A, in case you ever want to split your synths out 2 different outputs. You can also set the outputs on the return tracks. And so Say I send my drones out of group 1 and 2. I would need to set my return tracks out of group 1 and 2 as well. Because if I have a sound such as strings going out of 3 and 4, but the return tracks are going, but it's sending to these 1 and 2 return tracks, you're going to hear some strings in 1 and 2 instead of 3 and 4. So I made duplicates so you could set these to any other outputs that you would need. So I can set these to 3 and 4 and send it to the 3 and 4 reverbs, and now it'll come out in 3 and 4 with the reverbs. Looking at the main, it's very similar to the other Ableton session. I just have a light glue compression and a limiter on the mains. That way you avoid digital clipping and everything comes out sounding nice and full and very clean. Now that we've looked at the plugin version, let's go ahead and look at the stock Ableton version and just note any changes between the two. Once the project opens, you'll see the same instruction menu, except it'll say stock version and it'll have rules and requirements that are geared towards the stock version of Ableton. Everything within the pads channel is going to be the same. All of these were sampled down into Ableton samplers, so you shouldn't have any third-party plugins on the pad channel. The only thing that has changed on the main A group is the bubble pad and the synth brass. In the plugin channel, these were within the same Omnisphere multi. On this one, I ended up sampling both of them down into their own individual instrument. The only difference between this and the other session are both are unaffected by the mod wheel. They sound the exact same whether the mod wheel is closed or open. On main B, I had to sample down the Aniplex sound instead of using Omnisphere. It sounds very close. I've tried to match the effects it has on it. The only difference being it doesn't open up with the mod wheel like it would in Omnisphere. Polygoat has also been sampled down. This one also sounds very close to the original. I even kept the aftertouch set to the LFO pitch amount. The LFO Plux has been sampled down from Omnisphere as well. It has the same principle where the LFO is set to the volume. It is still super usable. It still sounds great. This Distant Memories patch is the original sampled Distant Memories that I had in the main keys session. I sampled down the Buttersaw lead. This sounds exactly the same. I was very impressed with how little sampling it down took away from the fidelity. Annabelle's was also sampled down. Just like Buttersaw, I thought this one sounded really good as a sample, as well as the Omnisphere instrument. Very little difference between the two. The Kurz lead does sound a little bit different. I did my best to replicate the intricacies of the sound and try to match the effects as close as possible, but there is an audible difference. I'll let you hear it right here. It still sounds really cool. It just doesn't have the same bite that it did in Omnisphere. This Polycomp preset had to be resampled into Ableton Sampler. This one remained pretty accurate to its original form, though. There wasn't a whole lot of modulation that affected it. For distro, I used a instrument I made for the stock version of the Ableton main keys template and paired it with the Holy Textures. So now you have Holy Textures on the Aux B as well as main B. Hit group remained the same. Annabelle's we've already been over, and piano lead remained the same. For the strings, just like the other Ableton keys template, I went ahead and sampled down the main string sound, and the quartet sound was already sampled down. There are some differences with the strings. The biggest noticeable difference is the fact that Ableton Sampler can only go up to 32 voices. And so you hear when it drops off after 32, where I think Omnisphere was a healthy 64 voices on the strings. For the pads and textures, nothing changed. It was all stock anyway. And last but not least, I had to switch out the Valhalla reverbs. For the hall verb, I'm using the Berliner hall left and right. I try to match the settings to match what that VintageVerb was doing. And then for the Shimmer, I'm using the Ableton Studio backwards, left and right. The algorithm is set to Shimmer mode, and I try to match the settings to match the Valhalla Shimmer reverb. Everything else remains the same. All the routing remains the same. The MIDI mapping remains the same. The only difference are those few sounds that I went over. So if you don't have Omnisphere 3 or those Valhalla reverbs, you should still be in good hands and you should still be able to use this session to its fullest potential. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for your support. It truly means a lot. If you haven't already grabbed this Aux Keys template, go ahead and hit the link below and grab it right now. Thank you guys.